Hi everyone. Thank you for watching the Compass Guide channel. And please subscribe to the channel and spread the word among your peers and friends. Everything that we produce, the content that we produce, it can help them to have a better journey into Canada as an immigrant, or a better journey as wherever they are in their profession. Today, I have the privilege and honor to have a person who is a namesake of mine. So when I was booking the Zoom call with him, it was Sandeep and Sandeep. So it's my honor and pleasure to introduce to all of you Sandeep Kawadkar, who happens to be a friend now, and also a very senior leader in financial services sector in Canada, who has spent time in the big five banks, in other financial organizations, and is also a fellow mentor, mentoring newcomers in this country. Sandeep, welcome to our channel, The Compass Guide, and thank you for giving time.
Thank you, Sandeep, and I'm happy to be here.
Yes, and I must tell everybody who is going to watch this episode that we actually met each other because we were mentoring the same mentee. And when that mentee actually got a job, when she put in a LinkedIn post thanking quite a bit of us, I found Sandeep's name there, and maybe because it was a namesake, I reached out to him saying that, by the way, I'm Sandeep too, and I was also in that same note, and that's where we started talking to each other.
And Sandeep, I'm glad, Sandeep, you did, because that started off a wonderful friendship that I cherish quite a bit.
No, same here. And again, thank you so very much for taking out your time. And the format, Sandeep, the way we do is, you definitely want you to give our viewers, our audience, a little bit of your journey.
Sure.
And then we would probably break it into one or two or three questions, depending on the time. In terms of what would be best useful for the people who are going to watch it.
Terrific. Yeah.
So why don't you give us your journey, a little bit about your background and your journey in Canada?
For sure. So as part of the journey, I grew up in India. I did my undergraduates in electrical engineering, and now I work in financial services, but I had absolutely nothing to do with financial services. So I used to work construction for a period of time. I moved into software, and I used to be a programmer for a while. And then I just happened to drop into financial services. And my journey really within Canada started when the company that I used to work for India wanted me to go to Canada and establish an office up here. I'm like, okay, well, it's something new, something exciting that brought me here. And that's when I actually was doing more business development for our software firm. One thing led to another, and I said, you know what, I'm not getting any younger. And I always wanted to do a little bit more on the master's in business. So I actually ended up pursuing my MBA here. So I left my job, went full-time to MBA school. And as part of that summer program, ended up working for a large financial institution, CIBC, in summer within their process improvement telephone banking areas. That was my start of the journey within Canada, right? And it's been unique, and it's been quite interesting in its own ways. But at the same time, I think as I've seen more and more of the journey go through, what I've realized is it's not that different from anywhere else you would go. Eventually, what I've always recognized, or I've always felt, is the journey is the same. It's just your approach that needs to be tailored. Your approach needs to be there. And again, there are some fundamentals that you have to follow through, and your fundamentals you have to follow as you're taking this journey on, right? So I started with a large bank, CIBC. I worked in multiple areas within CIBC, worked on the product groups, worked within telephone banking, as I said. And then one of the last roles I really had was in credit cards. And that was my introduction to payments. And it was something magical about the payments business in general, right? I fell in love with it and did multiple stints within CIBC in different areas of payments. And then that's what got me to another institution, PC Financial, right? And PC Financial was a much, much, much smaller bank, right? CIBC is probably 45, 50,000 people. And PC Financial, when I went there, was probably 200 people, no more. And a very different model, a very, very different model, because PC Financial outsourced most of the things that were not their forte, and they kept strategy and core fundamentals with their own people, right? So very different model, but a phenomenal experience in the same shape, right? Because it gave it opened up so many areas of possibilities for me in terms of trying out different things, right? Which sometimes is challenging when you're working with a larger organization where you have a lot more focus and a lot of SMEs working on different areas, right? So to me, that was my journey through PCF. And with PCF, I did a bunch of things. I did everything from credit cards to strategy to looking at channels, looking at partnership, establishing new partnerships, and then also relaunching the deposit business. Beyond the lending business. So it's been a great journey overarchingly. I think like I was saying, there's only the perspectives that you need to keep in mind as you're going through this. And for me, it always has been, am I learning enough? Am I feeling that sense of satisfaction at the end of the day after going through a day? And yeah, there are days where you probably want to forget. But at the same time, at the end of the day, if your thirst for learning isn't being satisfied, then you're better off doing something else. I mean, that's probably one guiding principle I've kept in my life all along. And to be honest, in Canada, that served me well as well.
No, and I think quite a few points that you just made, right? That are we learning in that whole process, and also, engineering to construction to software to, it's a journey. And I think I love the point that you made at the first, that it's not about, the journey is not very different, but how you take the journey, what is your, how you are doing it, is what makes a huge difference.
Certainly does, yes.
No, great. And so coming to the questions that I thought, knowing that, people who would watch this would probably look forward for that wisdom from you,
sure,
experience and your journey. So the first thing which I wanted to ask you is that, with so many years in the big five and then a much smaller bank, a much smaller financial organization, what would be your few points to people outside? Because I know that a lot of people are moving into Canada who have financial services experience, and they obviously intend to start in financial services.
Right.
But we also know that quite a bit of them are always stuck with the big five.
Yeah.
Because maybe they only know about the big five, they only heard about the big five. But I did a little bit of research for one of my sessions, and I figured out that there are 89 banks in this country.
Yeah.
With your experience, why don't you give a little bit more about that space? That how much is an opportunity there?
Yeah.
And what are the few things that people miss out?
For sure, Sandeep. I think when we look at the financial services sector, right, like any of the other geographies you would see, there would be some large players that take a bulk of the market. And then there are a lot of smaller players, right? A long tail that take a bunch of the other business. Canada is no different, right? So the big five or big six, let's say, they do take a lion's share of the business. That's how the industry has evolved, and we can probably do an entirely different session for why it's that way. But given that, we have to look at it in two lenses. One is from a customer perspective. When you come in, you see the big 4, 5, 6, right? And again, think of someone coming in for the first time in Canada, right? What they will see is CIBC putting out a newcomer offer out there, RBC putting out a newcomer offer. So you work for HSBC, and on HSBC, kind of because of their international, will put in an offer. So those are brands that are well known or in forefront, right? So it's not surprising that when you come in, you feel this is the industry, this is the business, because it's a familiarity with the brand, right? That breeds that kind of a confidence. And there's nothing wrong. The big five banks and other banks are doing fantastic work in a lot of different areas when you think of it from a career perspective, right? So there's tons of opportunity. But what I recognized and realized when I moved to a smaller bank was smaller banks, there's a few things that you would actually be able to benefit from, right? One is they don't really have dedicated resources for each function that goes on within a bank, right? So think of it as a more nimbler version or a startup version of a financial services business, where if you are doing a particular, let's say a particular product, a particular project, you, doesn't matter what area you are from. Let's say I was from a product perspective, I was a product leader. I also had to think about what the implications were, for example, in risk. What implications or what impact am I going to be creating within operations? What is the customer experience impact of this, right? Versus if you go to a larger organization, there would be dedicated pool and teams of people focusing on it. Not that in the smaller banks there weren't, but instead there would be like one individual from each of these teams. So you, as a collective driver of that business or in product area, you actually got to experience impacts across the spectrum of a customer, across the spectrum of that institution, right? Which, at least personally to me, made me a lot more, made me learn a lot more, made me understand the business a lot more, and also made me knowledgeable enough to say, what's the impact of doing something like this? Which otherwise, if I'm in a silo, is a bit challenging to figure out, right? Because I'm seeing the impact right in front of me go through. The other thing that and I know a lot of us love to see impact of our actions, right? So if you put together a fantastic product strategy, a product or a risk strategy, what you want to see is impact. What I've generally seen, not that that doesn't happen in larger institutions, and again, I'm not even talking banks, but just let's take larger organizations. Yeah. But in a smaller organization, what happens is that correlation to your action to impact is so obvious and it's hard to miss. So if you are like me and you love to see the action and the impact from it, good or bad, and the results of those, smaller institutions are a great crucible for that, right? To me, it's a perfect experiment where you can see, create impact by doing things because you have the mandate to run it, right? So the accountability increases in smaller organizations because the same thing that might be 6 people doing it, one person's doing it, so your accountability goes up. Your drive and hunger grows up because you're learning a lot more. And at the same time, you're seeing the impacts of your actions a lot more clearly. Like I said, I don't mean to say that the bigger institutions don't do that, but it's just challenging sometimes because given the number of people that are playing part in this, right? So it's a lot more traceable here. And if you kind of get quite jazzed by that, a startup type of a culture, smaller institutions are fantastic. I mean, and the last thing is this: smaller institutions, just because of the nature of their business, they are hungry because they need to grow against the incumbents. So they are more hungry to grow, which always brings in a fun mandate. And at the same time, they're also a little bit more willing to grow and grow fast. So they are willing to pivot quickly. They're willing to make changes. They're willing to make decisions much quickly, right? Because there's less number of people that you need to go through to get to the decision. So that builds in a different level of dynamic and a different level of things, which again, like I said, I'm sure there's larger organizations that do a great job of it. But in a smaller organization, you're more likely to get that kind of a consistent environment than a typical organization.
No, and I think very interesting points, Sandeep, that you just mentioned. That the agility and the flexibility of a smaller organization, and if you are willing to take that extra stride, it's not a match, right? Because I have also in my career been with very big organizations and smaller organizations which are growing, and if you love that, if you enjoy that, that particular piece of speed, and most importantly, seeing the results that you put on the table, like the measurable piece of it, and if that's what your gives you the strength, then nothing like it. And I think one more question just on top of this same topic. Also, as an employer, how do you think these smaller organizations play in Canada? Like,
Yeah,
it's quite a bit of them, right? It's
indeed.
small, but there's so many, right?
Indeed. There are, most certainly. And like I said, Sudeep, it's not a question, like I said, of larger. There are lots of large organizations that are doing a fantastic job. So like
Right.
it's not a critique on strategy or in terms of what they're doing. It's just when you are pursuing a career, these are the things you're likely to experience a lot
Absolutely.
more with a smaller organization, just because of the nature of things, right? Not because somebody is doing right or wrong. So
Yeah.
just so be clear. And I think as an employee, from an employment perspective, that's the interesting part. These organizations, again, are not going to have the same level of cachet, right, or a well-recognized brand. So it can be challenging for them to attract the talent sometimes, right? They have to really build into that in terms of why somebody would come and work with this brand, especially where you have 4, 5, 6 brands that are dominating and really good reputations, right? So, but I think what I would say for anybody contemplating this is, right, there's lots of challenger brands out there from a financial services perspective. There's lots of credit unions per se that cater to a different segment. But if you are in that thirst mode and a learning mode, there aren't any better places to learn, because like I said, they do not have the brand. So what they would really focus on is that opportunity for you to learn and to create an impact, right? Because if you don't even give that, then what do you really have, right, to offer your potential employee? So they are pretty nimble, and you will actually see growth come at a much faster pace sometimes, because you're learning so much as an individual that you feel you're learning a lot more than just the area that you represent. And I think
Right.
as an employment avenue or as an employer, that's the piece that I would say anybody watching to kind of think at the back of their mind, right? These are brands that may not be well recognized, but they can give you experiences that would actually probably turbocharge your career, because you're dabbling in spaces that generally are not on your job description. Like, I'd be very honest, when I was from a PC Financial perspective, when I was there, I would tell people, forget what was in your job description after day one,
Yeah.
because you will go to the depth and you will actually experience multiple things along the way, right, that are quite different, right? And that's not because you wanna switch on them, no, but that's the kind of experiences that you should be ready for in these jobs. And if that appeals to you, I would highly recommend that you look at some of these organizations and see what they have to offer.
No, I think great points, and I'm sure that people who are going to watch it should look into and do a little bit of research on all the other financial organizations which are available. When you're networking, do the networking on those organizations too. Even in my experience, I started off with a very small organization here, and it actually helped me a lot because of being able to do so many other different things and increase my width, which
Right.
otherwise in a very big organization you would not probably get that flexibility.
Yeah.
You'd probably be more blinkers on. Like,
Yeah.
uh, the second question, Sandeep, and this is, I wanted to twist the question. Generally, we always talk about the positive side of things and what a newcomer should do, and we always talk about all that.
Yeah.
With your experience and as a mentor and also as an employer, you have seen newcomers coming in who have got into the job. A lot of times we know that newcomers are looking for that job so badly.
Yeah.
But a lot of time we also see that they're not so focused on how do they do after that, after getting the job, which is the
Right.
right?
Right.
Which is actually just the beginning of getting a job. But after that is what is more important. So I thought that why don't we talk about, from your experience, 2 or 3 mistakes that you see people doing.
Yeah.
And if they are cognizant of the fact that these are the few things that they should be careful about,
Yeah.
it can definitely help them to have a more sustained, consistent career growth in this part of the world.
Yeah. And I think Sandeep, that's an interesting question, because I again, going back to my original thing, I think it's probably something that could be universal irrespective of the geography in terms of things that you should be doing. And again, where, like I said, myself included, we've all been guilty of not following through on some of these things consistently, right? But I think the first thing that comes to my mind with these is it's that, remember, it's a journey, right? And there will be milestones and there will be highs and lows along the way, right? First things first, you don't necessarily start doubting yourself every time things don't go your way. Okay. And I think tied to that is doubting your abilities is going to be probably the most challenging thing. And then at the same time, if you go down that spiral, you'll try finding reasons that are outside of your control to say, this is why it didn't happen. To me, I think use each of these things as learning experiences when things don't go your way, or even when things go your way. Ascertain and reflect to say, was it sheer luck? How much was my effort? How much was really some luck that I always need? And how much was really things falling the way they did, right? Versus getting too carried away with the highs and getting too carried away with the lows as well, right? Because I think this whole self-reflection of why am I not progressing as fast as somebody else next to me, right? To me, I've seen far too often where you go down that spiral and you start looking for reasons beyond what you control. Right. And that is, in my view, I think it's probably something that you are bringing upon yourself that you should not. Because what's made you successful is all the skill set that you have so far. So don't start doubting them now, just because things didn't go your way, right? That would be one thing. It's a journey and you gotta really go through that. The second piece I would say is, I think, which I'd say kudos to you, Sandeep, because you do this really, really well, is you gotta keep talking to people who know better than you. In terms of understanding the areas that are of interest to you, or there are new areas that are emerging and you want to find out, right? The networking is always used as such a bad word, right? Because it's like, oh, you network when you want to find a job. And that's the wrong way of looking at it. And again, to your point, Sandeep, you don't stop it after you found a job. Because that's exactly what you're now creating. The mindset of saying is, hey, I found a job. Now I don't need to network. I'm going to do my own things. The whole concept of networking, which I would say that you have to keep doing, is you have to constantly reach out and look for people who are building other experiences or getting different experiences. Because in this lifetime, we're not going to be able to do all of those experiences ourselves. So learn from them and build those connections, right? Not with the ulterior motive of let me find a job, but the whole inherent motive of this seems very interesting. What can I learn from here? What can I leverage from their experience that I can actually use to do my current job better? And it could be anything that you're passionate about, right? Doesn't have to be one or the other. Could be soft skills, could be hard skills, could be emerging areas, whatever it is, right? My view is stay hungry with those learnings and stay hungry with the connections that you're building, because those things are gonna define your journey. And I think you will be richer for those experiences, because you never know when you're gonna be putting those all together for the betterment of yourself and either organizations or something that you're starting off in your own, right? So keep those things going. And I always say this, I tell my friends as well, you're fantastic at it, Sandeep, because you actually keep out without any intent. You meet up with people because you want to learn and build up those bridges. So that kind of a thing is so critical as you go through your journeys, because that is gonna eventually define your career success to yourself, right? And you are the only judge of your career success or not, right? And so by hopefully this enriches it and actually puts you on the path and makes you enjoy that journey a lot.
No, I think again, great points, Sandeep. And I think the first point that you made, right, the self-doubt, and I think that's a very important piece, because it also kind of directly gets linked into the mental wellness. A lot of people, a lot of newcomers who come in and they short term, they might have to do things which they thought that is something demeaning or something, something not what I've done before. But what is very important is to have the clear thought process that what you have, you already have. So don't question on that, plan it accordingly, and then if you plan it, then you know why what is happening, right? Some part of it is luck, but how much is luck and how much is your own piece is very important piece. And I love the point that you made, the last point, that a lot of time I have seen this and you have seen this. A lot of time we see that people networking for the sake of networking. That's one.
Correct.
Second is people networking only to get a job.
Yeah.
And the relationship building part of it, which is the most key, the biggest element, because you're building relationships, which can give you nothing but just mental peace, understanding of something new, getting to know someone by itself is a great thing to have, right?
Yeah.
And it's so important and especially in a country where you probably do not have any social circle around it, and no natural social circle around it, right? You're building it brick by brick.
Yeah.
So such important points. And I think we come to the last part of our conversation today, Sandeep.
Yeah.
Because the immigration trend, at least because of COVID and everything else, we have seen that there's a pressure on that.
Yeah.
We see that a lot of people, international students, then moving into work permits and then trying to get their PR through that work permit. Yeah. It's for people who are moving in with financial, directly as with point system and whatever from other parts of the world. Any one or 2 points that you would like to, because you have also been an international student in this country. Right. Not as an international student, but you moved and then you did.
Yeah.
But you did.
Mm-hmm.
Any advice for people who are planning to get into the workforce in Canada after being an international student here? Maybe 1 or 2 points quickly if you could touch.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say you guys are fully the level of talent that's coming in from a student's perspective across the world into Canada is just amazing. I'm blown away by the talent I see day in and day out, right? So to me, it is absolutely got nothing to do with your capability at a functional or technical level. You guys can kill it, right? That's a given. It's only about, as we all know, how do you take that talent and put it into a particular intent, right? You can have all the talent, but how do you convert that into the intent of what you're trying to do, right? So that's the piece I would just say, focus on that part, right? Some of the things that I covered in my last question still apply. Right. Keep an open mindset. Don't get too down on yourself per se or too high, and seek those mentors who are gonna be advising you without a bias of how they see it and how they have gone through it, right? Because sometimes more than anything, you need a couple of mentors who are going to pick you up and actually chart and push you down the path. We're going to push you to do things more faster, harder, right? So I would say establish those connections as you make that transition from an international student to work permit or into the workforce per se, because those things are invaluable, and they will actually establish lifelong journey and lifelong learning for you through people who have been there and have done that per se. So you'll benefit from that. That would be my sincere advice. Like I said, keep your head high. Always never take no for an answer. That's the other thing I would always say. Because far too often, if you hear 3 rejections, like, well, this is not going to work out. No, you guys are fully capable. You guys have talent beyond what I can even comprehend. So have a positive attitude, keep your head high and keep going at it. It's only a matter of time.
No, thank you. Thank you, Sandeep, for those words. And I'm sure people who are going to watch this, in whichever space they are, they would get a lot of value from each of these points that we discussed today. Thank you again, Sandeep, for your time today, and thanks to everyone who would be watching this. And as I say, that please spread the word and do subscribe to the channel and spread the word so that it can help others. And with that, again, thanking Sandeep for the time, for taking out time for this for us. Thank you, Sandeep.
Thank you for having me. That was a great conversation. Appreciate it.
Thank you, and to everyone. Bye and have a nice day.